So, with time passing, we've got another volume of ReZero which is coming out, which means that we've gotten more illustrations. This video will sort of look at the illustrations and talk about what's happening, and go over something that Tappy revealed in the latest volume of ReZero that was not in the web novel. So the first illustration is Todd holding Subaru against the wall. This is when Subaru is trying to use the poison pill, and of course Todd pulls him against the wall and essentially inspects his tooth, and then lets Subaru choose the way he wants to die. We then have Emilia and Rem, which is really weird because from memory they don't actually appear in the web novel. However, this means that maybe Tappy has added some sort of flashback or something which involves them, which would make this image come through. Now, as we do know, Rem is with the Prime Minister and Emilia is looking for Subaru in Guaral. The next image we have is of Subaru's sort of group in the arena. Of course, we have Whites, Edora and Hyen and Subaru against the Guilty Law, and we have Gustav sort of making the announcement to start fighting. We then have the new illustrations, which I'll start with now. The first is Subaru calling to Satella and Satella descending down and finding him. And Tappy has revealed something that happened after this. We also have one of Subaru with old man Noel, and Noel gives Subaru the poison pill. The next image is of course of Hyen and Subaru's group talking about Subaru's true identity, because of course they think he's the Emperor's son. We have another image of White's death. This is most likely as Subaru's return by death is starting to deteriorate, and White's feels like someone treated him as a human. We then have another illustration of Subaru essentially winning after chasing off Todd and Arakia. We see that Tanza is also touching her head, which seems to imply that Subaru has just patted her on the head, and Tanza is sort of touching her head because of that. We have Hyen's and White's death at the hands of Todd. This is just before Subaru calls for Satella, and of course they both sacrifice themselves to save Subaru, and then Subaru of course bumps into Cecilis and then calls down Satella. We have Arakia and Todd in the meeting with Gustav, and this is most likely when Arakia is about to kill Gustav, and Todd is of course calling the shots. We then have, of course, the second to final illustration, I think, or the third to final, of Todd and Arakia arriving to the island. This might be when Subaru chases them off, but we know Arakia sits in the carriage, and we can actually see Todd through the windows sitting in the back. We then have a scene of Cecilis, Subaru, and Gustav, and this can potentially be when Gustav is speaking to Subaru and Cecilis states that he wants to just be in the room. However, I'm not too sure, but I guess in the future we will actually find out when this takes place, but it's most likely early on in the Gladiator Island arc. The final illustration we have is with Subaru collapsed on the floor, and we see Tanza's appearance in her sort of underclothes. Now this is really funny because back when Arc 7 was sort of releasing these sort of web novel chapters, many people thought Tanza was in like bra and panties. I'm not sure why people thought this, but a lot of people were getting hyped up with what Tanza would be wearing in the illustrations. But as you can see, she is wearing underclothes, so I'm not sure why so many people were getting a bit too excited about that. Now, as for the sort of new information that's come with the arc, we don't know everything yet. But what we do know is that when Subaru calls down Satella and he reconnects with Satella and dies at the hands of Todd, he actually ends back all the way at the start of the Gladiator Island. So when he returns by death, he ends up emerging from the lake with Cecilis pulling him out. So we see that when he reconnects with Satella, he essentially starts back at the beginning, but this time he has Satella with him, and of course we see that the light novel just fast forwards to him amassing a giant party and scaring off Todd and Arakia. So yeah, So the reason why Subaru's return by death was deteriorating was because Satella was not with him. And the second he reconnected with Satella and died, he went all the way back to at the start of the island. Which makes sense because Satella was with Subaru at Chaos Flame, then Tanza blew herself up, which seemed to knock Subaru to the Gladiator Island, and Satella of course lost sight of him. So when Satella found him again, when he called Satella down, he went back to when he got blasted to the island.